Hello, all. My name is Kelsey George. I'm a therapist with Macon Wellness, and I am going to chat with you today about 3 ways your amygdala is stressing you out. And this is a webinar, while presented by Macon Wellness. This is a webinar on Stress Shifter, which is a really awesome app that we're going to talk about later in the webinar. So thanks for being here. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, here is our learning agenda. So to start off, we're going to explore stress and we're going to explore how we cope with it, how we respond to it, and a little bit more about what it is. Then we're going to move to the amygdala and do a little bit of neuropsychology. And then we're going to get into the meat of 3 ways your amygdala is stressing you out. And then we're going to focus on Stress Shifter and what this app can do and what a great resource it is. And we're going to finish with some testimonials. Okay, so let's talk about how we use it, how we usually cope with stress. So Stress Shifter identifies the 4 Ds, which is distract, disconnect, discount, and deny. So we distract ourselves or avoid whenever we are feeling any uncomfortable feeling when we're stressed out. And I'm sure we're all guilty of this one and in the 3 I'm about to describe. We disconnect or isolate ourselves because we're overwhelmed and being social requires just a bit too much energy sometimes. We discount or fail to acknowledge any good thing that might be happening or any silver lining that might come out of the stressful event. And we deny or fail to take responsibility or accountability for our actions and our responses that might be contributing to the stressful event. So let's talk about the amygdala. The amygdala is a collection of nuclei located deep in a part of the brain known as the temporal lobe. And the term is Latin for almond because the amygdala is an almond-like shape, and it is in the most prominent section of that temporal lobe. The amygdala is part of the limbic system, and it is a set of brain structures that help regulate our behavioral and emotional responses. And though it's probably best known for its role in the sympathetic nervous system, which tells us to fight, flight, or freeze, it does serve a variety of purposes. There's actually been a 4th response added recently to fight, flight, or freeze, which is known as fawn, and that is the tendency to people please. It also involves a lack of boundaries, codependency, and a need to please the very person that is triggering us. So try to reflect for a moment if which one of these 4 different Fs, we'll call them, which of these you're most likely to do when you are stressed or when your amygdala is fired off. The amygdala is involved in detecting threats, triggering a body response. So, for example, pulling your hand off of a hot stove. It's involved in fear conditioning, so being afraid to drive after getting in a car accident. It's involved in processing positive emotions and encoding emotional memories. So let's talk about some examples of an activated amygdala. For example, you lose a tennis match and in your anger, you throw your racket across the court. Your boss criticizes you in front of your coworkers and you're so angry that you yell back and quit your job. You win the lottery and your excitement makes you scream and cause a scene in the convenience store. When you feel or see these warning signs that we're going to talk about on the right-hand side here, your body is telling you that your amygdala is in full force. And these physiological responses are not necessarily a bad thing. They are simply states and signals that alert us to the external stimuli that is causing them. So what do those look like? Shaking, increased blood pressure, racing heart, fast breathing, tense muscles, nausea. When we become better at noticing these physiological responses, we can practice responding differently. Okay, here we go. 3 ways your amygdala is stressing you out. We're going to first explore reacting to the outdated stress threat. From caveman to millennial. So the response from our amygdala is an evolutionary one. Back in the Stone Age, 200,000 years ago, life was dangerous for our caveman ancestors. If they wanted to survive, they had to be constantly alert for dangerous threats. And if they weren't, they didn't survive. The default setting for their mind was safety first. So in our modern world, we have actually adopted that default setting. So what this means is that our stress threat is working as a bit of an outdated operating system. Think of it as using an iPhone 3 when we really should be using an iPhone 11. In other words, there isn't anything wrong with you. We are simply just still evolving as Homo sapiens. Number 2, using emotional reasoning over logistical reasoning. So when our amygdala is activated, it means that one might have an intense emotional reaction that's out of proportion to the circumstance. The amygdala is activated when any strong emotion, anger, fear, anxiety, or even extreme excitement impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain in the frontal lobe that regulates rational thought. So essentially what is happening here is that the rational brain is bypassed and signals are sent straight to the emotional brain. And later, the thinking part of your brain processes the information, and you may realize that your reaction was over the top. I know that I've been there, and I'm sure we've all been there, because sometimes it just takes a little bit for ourselves to catch up. Research actually suggests an inverse relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So for instance, when the amygdala is activated, which is our emotional brain, the prefrontal cortex is less activated, which is our logical brain. When emotions run high, the blood and oxygen flow to the amygdala, flow there rather than the prefrontal cortex, reducing our ability to think and solve problems. So while this process is helpful in an actual life and death situation, when our amygdala is activated, it may also occur just when your kid hits a baseball through the car window, or again, when you lose that tennis match. Having all the blood run from your rational part of your brain won't help the situation and may cause you to act in ways that you later regret. So here's a more psychoeducational, scientific way what breaks down what's happening in the brain. So a sensory stimulus, in this case, the sound of the ball crashing through the window, travels through your auditory nerve and converts from a sound wave to an electrical impulse in the brain. This signal travels to the thalamus, which is gray matter that helps relay sensory signals, and then to the amygdala before it reaches the brain's cortex, or the thinking brain. This survival mechanism allows us to react to danger before the rational brain has time to process it. So even before you fully recovered how the ball got through the window, you can feel your body gearing up for a more dangerous situation. Number 3, believing and identifying with every thought that crosses your mind. So what if I told you that sometimes stress is a choice? And I'll just let that one sink in a little bit if we have an emotional response to that. So our amygdala is tricking us to think that we are in real danger when we're not. We know that by this point, right? When we are late to a meeting, we are stressed, anxious, we're tapping on the steering wheel. And sure, we don't want to be late to meetings, and we definitely want to hurry up and so we can make it as soon as we can. But ultimately, we're not in danger, and there's nothing we can do about it when we are stuck in traffic. So for this scenario, we have a choice. And a lot of the times, we are actually choosing to be stressed, when in actuality, being stressed isn't helping us get to that meeting any faster. So when we have a constantly activated amygdala, we convince ourselves that every innate thought we have must be true. We trust our feelings in a way that damages our mental health. There is a myth that we should always trust our feelings, and sometimes our feelings are influenced by our subjective reality, and thus not an accurate reflection of what is actually going on. So we are what is called in the literature as cognitively fused, which means we are so tightly stuck to our thoughts, we become fused to them. When we're experiencing cognitive fusion, we can't separate ourselves from our thoughts. Our thoughts become our reality. We feel removed from the world outside of our thoughts, removed from our senses, from what we're doing, and even from the people around us. When we are cognitively fused, we do not have the emotional capacity to question our thoughts or our threats. The opposite of cognitive fusion is cognitive defusion. And cognitive defusion involves taking a step back from what's going on in our minds and detaching a little from our thoughts. In this state of diffusion, we can observe our thoughts and other internal processes without getting lost in them, stuck in them, or fused with them. We can simply notice our thoughts, watch them, and accept them, and let them go if we choose to. All right, so I'm going to just stop here for a moment just to see if we have any messaging in our box, and we do not. So I'm going to go back to present. Okay, so now what? Now we know all of the things that are going on with our amygdala. We know that we're not in real danger. We know it's an evolutionary response. We know that there's some complex things happening neurologically. So now what? It's difficult, but an activated amygdala can be stopped if you make a significant effort to be conscious about what's happening in the brain. It helps to prepare in advance by practicing what you would do in various scenarios and even think about the potential consequences of losing control. The next time you feel a surge of anger, try talking to yourself through the situation instead of letting yourself automatically react to your intense emotions. Try paying close attention to your emotional and physical symptoms. It also helps to remove yourself from the situation if possible and take deep breaths until you calm down. It may take some time and several tries to truly gain control of highly emotional situations. In most cases, an amygdala attack or an activated amygdala can be prevented if there are no underlying mental health disorders. However, if severe anger is being triggered by post-traumatic stress disorder or intermittent explosive disorder, it's important to seek professional help as treatment will be more complex. Now, what I just described is mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy. And these are evidence-based treatments that have been clinically proven to help with an array of mental health symptoms, including stress and including an activated amygdala. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is paying attention to what is occurring in one's immediate experience with care and with discernment. It is knowing the state of your mind in this moment without judging it, evaluating it, thinking about it, or trying to change it. And it is awareness that is a way of relating to all experience, positive, negative, and neutral in an open and receptive way. And something like mindfulness is what this app, Stress Shifter, can help you practice. Next is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is also an evidence-based treatment that the app will help you get better at. And cognitive behavioral therapy helps us to change our experience with the world by focusing and reframing our thoughts and seeing how those thoughts affect our behaviors. So it examines the way that you think with cognitive therapy, and it examines the things that you do with behavioral therapy. And essentially, the way we think influences the way we behave. And so CBT focuses on goals and present-day emotions. So I know you're dying to hear about how you can start to implement some of these things, and that is where Stress Shifter comes in. And Stress Shifter, the idea is we're updating our old operating system, which is what we talked about before. So what is Stress Shifter? It is a CBT mindfulness-based app. It is an online course available to you on your own time. You can take it in the morning if that's what you're feeling. You can work on it a little bit midday if that's what helps you better, or you can work on it right before you go to sleep. The idea is that it's supposed to be made to make it as convenient for you as possible. So you're not bound to a certain appointment, but you can do this at your own time. There's 5 hours of videos and bonus material, and we learn these skills that I just briefly mentioned, which are rooted in evidence-based theory. Let's talk a little bit about what Stress Shifter's foundation is. So we talked about the 4 Ds, right, of what we did, of what we normally do when we're confronted with stress. And we focused to the 4 Fs. So by using Stress Shifter's skill system, you will be able to shift your reactions to face the issue, focus on the issue, be mentally free to let go of your fears, and live in the flow of the present moment, creating what you want, not what you do not want. And let's talk about this little man who's thinking about his ABCs, right? The general thesis of stress shifting is A, to have awareness, to begin to notice your triggers and that your amygdala is firing. B, to have breath, to recenter and calm down the sympathetic nervous system. And C, to have choice, to make a skillful thought based on what you have learned. So this is a sneak peek for you guys. And if anyone else that is on this webinar who is from Stress Shifter and who would like to add anything that I missed, please feel free to unmute yourself and chat about anything else that I left out.
Well, Stress Shifter is an opportunity to take control of your own body by observing it in such a way that you don't judge yourself, but you get interested and you start learning. All your body sensations have information, important information. What just happened? How did I just get triggered? What exactly happened? A lot of it with the amygdala is tries to protect us. It's like our security guard and alerts us of something that's similar that happened before that may put us in danger. But a lot of these things don't necessarily fit, but they just sort of like are warnings, and we take them seriously and we believe them. So what happens in Stress Shifter is, the question is you have a threat, but whether you believe how much you believe that threat is real will determine how much stress you feel. So like for some people, public speaking is a big threat because they believe that that people are going to be judging them. Other people just love to do public speaking and love to have an audience, so it's not really a stressful experience at all. So we need to learn a skill of how to operate our brain. We didn't ever get the brain operating manual when we were kids. No one told us about the amygdala. No one told us that we were going to be experiencing stress. So the opportunity in this course is to learn some specific skills of how to face your stress, how to focus on what just triggered yourself, and how to free yourself from being caught in that trigger.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan, for adding to that. And as everyone can see here, we have a QR code that will help take right to the app. And we also have an awesome 25% off code for attending this webinar, or if you are watching it at a later time and watching the recording. So here are some testimonials. I will just read this out loud. These are some of the folks who have done Stress Shifter and have talked about their experience. When I started this course, I was not sure what to expect. As I went through each module, I was able to really focus in on the stressors in my life and how they have impacted me over the years. Being able to identify my stress reactions, stress symptoms, self-judgments, my coping mechanisms to stress, and social survival strategy of seeking control and being the judger has been very valuable. To be able to have this insight and to now have the tools of being able to shift my chronic stress is absolutely amazing. This course has been very beneficial. Sorry, that was Jennifer G., who is an RN. For me, this process is allowing me to stop reacting dramatically and immediately to my own stressors and rather center myself, better understand the root cause, and process how I'm going to use that for the better good for myself and the whole. It will allow me to trust myself and also abandon my unhealthy self-judgments. And that's from Janie H., who is an NP. And lastly, I can change my negative reactions to stressors through mindful practice because my brain can be reprogrammed through neuroplasticity. Well said, Christine P., RN, BSN, MSN. Okay, and as I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Kelsey. I'm from Macon Wellness. Please contact us too if you're interested in any telehealth services in addition to the Stress Shifter app. And here is our contact information, which you now have. All right. I'm going to stop share. Thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you on the app.